All right.
All right. So, um, hello everyone. This would be discussion number 2 with the continuous pianist Lubomyr Melnyk. And today we're going to continue our conversation about the start of his music. Um, so, yeah, last time you explained a little bit what you were doing in Paris in those early first 2 years. But one thing I've always wondered is, how did you come to meet Carolyn in the first place? Carolyn Parson, this phenomenal dancer, and also all the other dancers. So I've heard that you worked with other people, such as I think her name was Kalina Cremona,
Clean.
and
Yes, she.
various other people.
There was Suzanne Holzer, Kalina Cremona, and Caroline Carlson, the three of them. And I don't really remember the process of how it happened in the very beginning. I believe it could have been Suzanne Holzer. Was someone. My girlfriend at the time was studying mime in Paris, and so I think it was through her that she had contacted some. There were some dancers as well in the group or something. I can't really remember. It was quite long ago. There are a lot of things about those years, even though it was 50 years ago. Many things that I remember extremely vividly. There are many sort of hazy areas that I just can't remember. But I think the dance classes of Carolyn Carlson were the final piece of the puzzle to come into place for the music to be born. And prior to that, there was all my sort of experiences as a hippie, and as well the intense interest in philosophy and new music. During in the 2 years that I was studying the master's degree I was working on the master's degree of philosophy. I was at Queen's University in Kingston, and there I was very active also in the musical world, and was very interested in music. And at that time also, it was very important that my almost let's say exclusive devotion to classical music, which had been with me all my life until that period, until I went to there to the university. That sort of classical barrier, which had prevented me from seeing a wider perspective of things, really was shadowed there, and my interest in all sorts of music was born and flowered. And I found that a lot of inspiration also from the East, at that time, the Indian music had just finally broken ground into the Western world through Ravi Shankar, etc., who had brought in a lot of stuff, a lot of new thinking, and then there was he's a guitarist. He could not. He, in a sense, he was like me. He could not pinpoint his music into any existing formula. It was completely a new concept of music. Uh, he was playing guitar with a regular guitar technique, but his mentality was very Eastern. And the guitarist was John McLaughlin. And there was a lot of influences from sort of way out, open, free jazz, but he was much more philosophical, much more form. Like he was very interested in the form of his music, and so I was truly inspired by the musicians of the East and that concept, and this concept of pushing the boundaries farther and farther of what the musician can do. And this was a very important element in the creation of continuous music. And so you have to understand that when I abandoned Canada, because I really could not see any musical potential there, I really felt that I wanted to touch the classical roots of our Western civilization, which I feel and still feel are the greatest achievement of human beings. So I left Canada and arrived in Paris, and this work with the dance classes was the culmination, the last piece needed. So I had been prepared philosophically and mentally, and with an attitude towards piano playing that was actually searching. I wasn't just open to new ideas. I was searching for something fresh and new in the concept of playing the piano. And this was very much connected to philosophy. I was mostly affected by, I would say, the ancient Greeks and by Zeno, or Zeno, with a Z, because I feel it's not by accident that his name is the foundation of the name of Zen. So, and although I didn't quite comprehend that at the time, and then also the interest in mathematics and just in general. I was philosophically and spiritually desiring to find something, achieve something. And so the Carolyn Carlson was the ultimate inspiration. It wasn't just that it was a dance class; it was her, because she's alive. But I speak with her in the past because I knew her. It was a long time ago. So I mean, she still is. She was, for me at that time, forever, the greatest phenomenon of a human being, because her entire body and mind was in a state of transcendence. So she transcended all the boundaries of space and time, movement, and all of this was done with the concept of artistic beauty and philosophical consciousness. So it wasn't just a class in ballet technique or developing the muscles or getting good at this or getting good at that. It was a class to help the dancers themselves transcend, to become transcendent beings, so that when they move, they were moving through time and space in a new dimension that had never existed before. And this newness that she represented, of course, fit perfectly with my own searching of a newness in the piano.
So did Carolyn ever discuss a sort of philosophy?
No,
Why
no, we
in
didn't.
so many words?
No, we actually didn't have to, Nathan. It was quite. It was. We all understood, or perhaps I understood better than the dancers did, because they were kind of regular people, where I was, a little bit of an oddball as a pianist and as a human being. So, but of course, there may be still another element that I have mentioned from time to time, and that is the fact that I had no food, and so that I was basically slowly starving to death. Well, it was not no food, but I had extremely little food. So I was quite at the point of hallucinating constantly, but not in the sense of, not in a drug-induced state, but just that the colors and things would start to, I mean, it's not a constant state. When you are famished and your body's high, your mind and spirit are freed. And so hallucination is a very bad term. I don't even know what hallucination is, because I think that what I could see in my eyes was complete reality, and it is reality. People think that hallucinations is sort of something you imagine, like somebody walking in front of you who isn't there, or a building that you see, or some sign, or some events that you simply, that your mind invents. That can be so. I do not know. All I know is that what I saw was true and real, and has always been that way. So when I say hallucinate, all I mean is that the colors will start to move slightly. The colors of the clouds, like you could stare at them, and things that you don't normally do when you're well fed. And I think that it had quite a significant effect on my sensitivity physically, because this is what brings us back to the actual moments, the actual burst of continuous music technique. It wasn't simply a musical kind of burst. In fact, it wasn't musical at all. The actual technique was based on a physical and spiritual experience of living energy starting to flow into my head that had never existed before. And it was being induced by the music, but not by, let's put it this way, you're not induced to it from listening to the music. It's not as though I'm playing Chopin. The Chopin piece will put me into a state of spiritual transcendence. No, it's the music is partly there to generate transcendence, because the first experience for me was this intense sensitivity to the overtones of the piano. You hold the pedal down and you create a continuum of sound playing these notes. And so in the state that I was, being starving to death and everything, my senses were extremely, I don't know my senses, but I was in an extremely heightened state of oral and spiritual awareness. You don't get there when you're well fed. It's, I mean, there's a reason why all the Indian fakirs are very skinny in face because they don't eat, because you you lose the spirituality. So, nevertheless, getting back to the main point, the this energy was allowing me to unite and perceive the overtone in the piano sound and the rhythms that were constant. It was like northern lights and everything, but in sound rather than vision. And so I was quite amazed. I found this so wonderful and so beautiful. And I realized that this was something that people had never experienced before, because people had not played the piano. And that was the birth, the very first beginning. And uh, as I played more and more and felt this, you know, experience, I realized that this was a technique that would grow. This was actually uh, like yoga or like Tai Chi or Kung Fu. This was actually a physical, spiritual technique that a person will do to generate this this magical energy, this transcendence. And so that was the beginning of the road. And I had no idea where it was going to lead me, where it was going to go. But I really loved it, and I found that this music had a phenomenal power to stay. It was like a statement of something. It wasn't just music that you listened to. And it was unlike classical music because it had no form. It had specific notes that were played specific manner, but it was not like a sonata or something where it was built completely, totally on the concept of a flow, a constant flow of sound, a river of sound. And when it actually the first 2 years were very intense. Philosophically, there were pieces that were simply the experience of playing, and there would be a musical format, a musical form, and sort of an idea, a musical idea that would be extended, and pieces could be, I think, Envoy is at least 1 hour. I can't remember, but it's a very, very long piece, and one's supposed to do it by memory. It's quite It's not It's not as complex as things were later because it was long periods of stuff. But the the uh, the, the devotion there on my part was to develop the intellect of the pianist and the mental capacity and expand the mind, as was commonly the phrase at that time. And I I found it so profoundly wonderful, and I was sure that the world would be amazed and overjoyed at this. It certainly was not, and has never been. It certainly was not back in the mid-70s in Paris. My first concert was at the Centre Américain on Boulevard Raspail. I don't even know if that building is still there. Probably is. I don't know what it is now because I think they moved somewhere, but I don't know. Years later, but this would have been around 1974 or something like that. And I had run around the city, put up posters and things, and it was amazing. 6 people came. Or maybe only 4 because 2 were friends. And I was extremely disappointed and brokenhearted. But I realized that uh, working with dancers, I realized that one has to be prepared for complete indifference from the public, uh, like painters do. But musicians and composers tend to get a little bit more of a hullabaloo. There's a lot more happening. Like if you look at the history of music, uh, the I think no musical person was ever so dismally uh, received by the general world as as me with this continuous music. And also, but this was similar to dancers. I saw this. I mean, the dancers could work ages preparing a really beautiful thing for people, and there might be 5 people come because in Paris it was fame. But this is probably true in most cities. Uh, fame will bring people. People won't go see someone but just out of curiosity because maybe well, they know that they're young, so maybe this person is really good. It's there was tremendous lack of curiosity for unknown artists. So it was really, really unhappy time for me. But I stayed close with the dancers all the time, and uh, several pieces. Suzanne Holzer was a great support. I did a couple of pieces with her, and she gave me some money for it. Although I mean, she herself really, it was a great generosity on her part. And then I worked with Lena Cremona, who was connected to Merce Cunningham. I didn't know perhaps I should. It's a good time now to mention John Cage because in the late 60s and early 70s, John Cage was the biggest name in modern. Well, perhaps not the biggest name. I think Karl-Heinz Stockhausen was the biggest name. He would draw the biggest crowd of people in new music. But new music was quite academic. It's not now. People nowadays don't bother about universities and new music and what's going on. But at that time, at the time of the hippies, it was extremely big deal. Like when a university music department brought somebody over doing some stuff like new music let's put it this way, they called it classical, but it was not classical at all. It was much less classical than my music. So I don't know, but they had no other name, so it was just called new classical music. So that would be John Cage, who's absolutely non-classical. Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, absolutely non-classical. Yanis Xenakis, the Greek. I think he was in Paris at the time. Also completely non-classical. Crumb. Well, there's a whole litany of names of people who were supremely famous. And I don't know. It was the only one there who I really felt would have possibly been an important person for me was John Cage, because he was in New York. New York was still flourishing artistically at that time, and the I don't know. It was Kalina Cremona who knew she was a personal friend with John Cage because she was a personal friend of Merce Cunningham in New York. Merce Cunningham, for people who don't know, was the biggest name in modern dance. He had the Merce Cunningham Dance Theater, which was doing extraordinary and fantastic things. Yeah, and this was at the time, people don't realize, but this was at the same time that David Lynch was doing Eraserhead. So uh, Merce Cunningham and David Lynch both represented very much the same sort of stuff. But David Lynch was doing that in film. Merce Cunningham was doing it on the stage with dancers. Just to this, I think help people to see, because I don't I don't think you can I don't know. Uh, there is no film of Carolyn Carl's performance. There are sort of tidbits, like there's things of that, but at the time there was no um, filming. Was it had to be done by Hollywood, like, or 16 million, like it was a huge procedure. So dance scenes were never filmed. We don't have a film of Merce Cunningham. And if there is, it might be something from television, with horrendous black and white sort of, like it's almost you can barely watch it. It might give you an idea, but you won't get the beauty of it. Okay, anyway, back. So Helena really thought, she respected what I was doing very much, and her and I got along very well, musically and artistically. That we had the same sort of freedom of vision, and like a desire to expand the boundaries of what we were doing. So I was doing pieces for her, like big pieces, really big, and so she got me in contact with. She said, I forget how I ended up in New York at the time. It would have been uh, probably in 76 or something like that. 77 maybe. I'm not sure. 78, like one of those 3 years. I can't remember my entire life sort of possible.
Sure.
Okay, there I am in New York, and I go to meet John Cage at his home, well, his apartment, So he's invite me, and of course he's a very, very pleasant person to everyone. He's very Buddhistic, so he's not going to be nasty and mean and crabby. He's very, very pleasant, and he is extremely intuitive. And after a few minutes, or like maybe 15, 20 minutes, we had tea and we spoke and discussed music. Maybe I even played some stuff for him. He said, "You know what, Lubomyr, you should go see this place." And in New York at the time, there was a devotee of an Austrian composer whom I had never heard of. And John Cage said, "You must get acquainted with the music of Joseph Matthias Hauer, Hauer, Joseph Matthias Hauer." He was dead at the time. No, he may still have been alive. I know he was. If he lived until around mid 70s or 80s, he would be quite old. But he was the one who actually created. He was the first human being who had the concept of 12-tone music. Now, he was contemporary with the guy who became very famous of it. I forget his name. Can you remember? No, was it Schoenberg? Yeah, I think so.
There's someone called Schoenberg.
Yeah. Schoenberg, yeah. So, and they had very, very different philosophies of it. Now, I think Howard felt that Schoenberg had stolen the idea from Joseph Hauer, but we don't know. Like, it's quite possible that both people were inspired with the same thing at the same time. This is not impossible, and it's not really a scientific thing. But what is a little bit puzzling is that Hauer's work was extremely philosophical and devoted to the fourth dimension, and to Pythagoras, the ancient Greeks, and to a new concept of music, not or a new basis for music. And Schoenberg took the 12-tone system and did not have anything to do with that. He tried to just sort of formulate like some rules of how the notes are going to work, and that's how he's going to compose. But Howard's music was much more transcendental, um, and extremely, I think, much more spiritual. I've listened to his stuff, and it's um, quite amazing and very, yeah, it's sort of like Zen. It really moves your head. So, uh, this guy was telling us here, he started talking about like how we had I had a long visit. I went to visit that guy in New York, and he explained to me a lot about Howard's music. And the thing that really grabbed me, that really, it was for me the biggest, I guess this was the final step where I could actually begin to write down with greater coherence all the musical ideas that I had like on the piano. Because Howard's system was to change, was a gradual change of the harmony by changing one note at a time. So I started to, because that's what I was doing. I was already doing that because the music was telling me this is how you're going to make me. Like you just change one note. We're not going to be jumping from like from the tonic to the subtonic and blah blah blah. We're going to flow imperceptibly from one uh, chord notation to another, and but that one note will make a huge difference. And it did. I'm playing there, and one note gets changed, and the whole harmonic spectrum is just wow. Like you become so sensitive, and it's so amazing. And so with after discovering Howard's music and philosophy, I was able then to more quickly and more coherently write down my pieces and structure my pieces and get a kind of a philosophical basis, like of ideas from the beginning to the end, and things were, um, yeah, it became, uh, I was given the gift of form to the music and to the pieces. And before that, it was quite, uh, tended to be quite scattered, and I didn't know what to do because every time I sat at the piano, something would go on.
So I'm very interested in the nature of these first pieces. So like in those first 2 years, something completely like impossible to imagine happened. There's nobody who came before you. Like now, when I'm trying to learn your music, I have an idea in my mind of what it can be, and it's still extremely difficult to imagine actually doing the full things. Like even your very first album, KMH. When you first discovered this energy, as you put it, what were you actually playing? Would you sit down, kind of do a broken chord, and then experiment in like an improvisatorial
No,
way? Or
no,
what was happening?
no. I would begin uh, with a very strict and formal type of musical idea and pattern. So it wasn't. It, I mean, occasionally it would be. I could just sit down and see what happened, listening to the piano and what happened. But continuous music starts. It's like you're hopping onto a merry-go-round. It's already moving. So you're not really going to experiment because or it's like hopping onto a train that's already moving. So the wagons are there, everything is there. You hop on, and the notes are there. There's a bunch of notes, and you let them go. So um, you then start to manipulate the train and where it goes and that sort of stuff. But you take your initial motion and I don't know. For example, an analogy would be like the train could be carrying wood, or the train could be carrying pillows, or the train could be carrying tanks of water or something, and they're all different weights, and the speed is all different of the train, and so you when you hop on the train, you immediately take up the speed, you take up the weight, you take up the pressure, the pressure onto the keys, you're taking up all sorts of small little elements and that sort of stuff. So uh, it's it's always an improvisation until you actually get the piece strictly formulated. And until that point, there's a lot of a lot of sort of uh, letting things go into places and structuring continuous music was always a great problem. Structuring a piece, getting a real musical form that made sense and that held things together was always difficult. And well, thanks to Joseph Matthias Hauer, at least I was able to do it, but it was without him it would have been impossible. I would still have been, I think, just um, floating around in the ether with sounds and piano stuff. Um, well, there's one thing we have to talk about. This it's not a very important thing, but I think it's very in a way it's very important. And this is my first arrival to Paris. You know, um, I had never um, been to Europe before. Well, of course, when I was a little child, yeah. But being from after, once after the school years, this was my first time, and uh, I mention this because I believe that everything I do has been almost set out. I'm almost like a slave actor, forcing to act out something, a role that someone else has written, and that I must go on stage and take this step to the right and this step to the left without knowing. It's not really like that. I know it's not like that's quite a bad analogy, but maybe people will understand if I say about this first arrival. Uh, my girlfriend Barbara and I had flown in. We came to Charles de Gaulle Airport. And in order to save money, this was a long time ago. Now you couldn't even do it. But in the or like the early 70s, people could still hitchhike in North America and in Europe. And so we decided to save money and hitchhike to Paris because everything seemed so expensive. And we had never had any money because we were just students. But anyway, so the young Frenchman picks us up. And we're talking, he drives us into Paris. And he doesn't just drop us off somewhere. It was like he was a guardian angel or like sent by God to carry us into the city. And we drove past the Paris Opera. Like, because the road goes immediately beside it. We drove right through the center, this central area. And I remember the color of the stone, like the color of the stone in Paris is incredible. And I remember the colors of the clouds. It was sort of these gray, sort of broken, heavy, sort of cumulus clouds, but not those super puffy ones, but when they're already kind of broken up. and it was quite amazing. The colors, I could not believe it. Like it was as though I had entered into magic land, you know. And this guy drove us. We said, well, we would like to be in the Latin Quarter, like on the artistic area. So he drove us, and where did he take us? I mean, this is what is so important. He drove us to a hotel right by the Pantheon uh, in Paris, and the hotel. He said, "Here's a good hotel for you." And I look at it, and it says, "L'Hôtel des Grands Hommes," the hotel of great men. Hmm. Okay. I want to be one of those great men. I want to be someone who does something to deserve to be in this hotel of the great men in this name, because I felt, why did he bring us there? You know, it was quite amazing. I mean, there's hotels everywhere, you know, and it wasn't the cheapest one. And it was like, you know, he knew. I mean, he knew because so logically he would have taken us to the cheapest hotel in the Latin Quarter, but he didn't. He drove us right to the door and dropped us off in front of that particular hotel. And that's why I feel it's worth mentioning, because I think it's quite magical. It's almost like that was where my life and the road to continuous music started, at that hotel. You know,
Mm.
that it was a sign of that, Lubomyr, you. It's not that you will, you have to do something. It is your destiny and your obligation to do something remarkable. And so I really felt that. And it was my whole being and my whole soul felt transfixed when I arrived, getting out of the North American mentality and into the European, Parisian mentality. It was like going to Mars, really. It was like suddenly you had become a Martian. Like it was, the colors were different. Everything was different. Even the space that you walked was different. It felt, this actual physical space felt different. It was quite astounding. And so that was the very start of the road to continuous music.
That's all right.
Yeah, Nathan, I think, can we leave more for later on, because it's quite a long time now, and I have to break off. So um, the uh, the strange thing is, as I mentioned earlier, halfway in our talk, that just like in Paris, there was absolutely no interest in this music. Even these days, there's no interest in this music. Um, although this is
It's getting a little better.
getting a little better, but I'm really not going to be around that much longer. I think, you know, I can't hang around another 60 years, or another 50 years. So I'm this the 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 main thing, which is related, like comparing now and back to 50 years ago or 45 years ago, that uh, even though this music slightly is better known now, somewhat, than it was in 1980 or 78 or whatever it was, uh, the fact is that people still, at 1978 and 2024, still are completely oblivious to the fact that continuous music enables the pianist to do impossible things physically impossible things. Because mentally, the normal human mind cannot operate that fast. You understand that I've recently, in these concerts, I've started to do two piano butterfly, two pianos. So I pre-record the first. And I'm going at the end, like before in 2016, I was going moderato, like that. Now I'm going, you know, and really, and imagine at that speed, I stop on the millisecond as the tape. Now there's no counting because there's no counting. It's not as though, oh yeah, he's just counting the bars and the beats, and that's not happening at all. Nobody's counting either on the first piano or the second piano. The brain is operating at such a speed. It's really Zen speed that in 1/100th of a second, I stop. I hear like, and it's gone. Like you can't understand because the fingers are running like crazy. They're going, and you hear the tape stop. So you would normally, before you stop, you'd still keep going 2 or 3 notes. But we're talking about around 14 notes a second. It's not. It's not the fastest speed, but it's the fastest normal speed that a normal pianist can do. So that's what I'm doing at the end of Butterfly. And so in 1/14th of a second, my hand stops on the note. Now, this is not normal, but the public seems oblivious to to the fact that this pianist is doing things that are physically impossible. The public still reacts very nicely, thank God, to the music. So I'm grateful for that. But I'm kind of sad that people still do not realize how different this is from a classical pianist who's playing brilliantly, and they deserve all the adulation they receive. They absolutely deserve it because they're doing phenomenal stuff. And I wish that people would understand that I'm not just playing the piano like a big shot pianist or something. That my hands and fingers are doing something completely different. And anyway, it all started there.
Yes, it's very difficult for people to understand unless they try to play it for themselves. Like my appreciation of what it is that you can do has significantly increased since actually playing it seriously.
Yeah. That's but I'm hoping that people might start getting curious and start being aware. Although, on the other hand, it may be really hard to appreciate that aspect. Still, when I played in Ukraine, like more people tell me, like in Europe, if anyone, whoever talks to me after, and they want to convey their positive feelings, they all talk about how beautiful the music was for them. Okay, in Ukraine, it's not like that. Most of the people in Ukraine who talk to me after say, how the hell can you play like that? How can you do what you do? And I don't know why the Ukrainian people understand. But it's strange because there's nobody writing and saying, oh, Lubomyr Melnyk does miraculous things on the piano. So so they already have that idea. No, they know intuitively that continuous music is a phenomenal pianistic achievement. And that is part of the raison the raison d'etre of continuous music is actual technique of the ability to play it is part of the reason why this music needs to exist. The music probably in itself, if a classical pianist can do it, it will not have the transcendent Zen quality that the pianist brings with him, the continuous pianist brings. A classical pianist may play the notes, but they will not be playing the notes correctly, and there will be something severely missing. It's sort of like uh, the continuous pianist is the only one who can make the music real,
Mm.
whereas uh, the what do you call it? The classical pianist creates a photograph of the thing, and the photograph is quite far from the real thing.
Yes.
And so the the photograph is, we accept the photograph as being far, but why? This deserves some investigation. Why is the photograph not as good as the real thing? It's not in the colors. It's not in the shape. What it is the lack of space. There's the dimension of space that's missing.
And for people listening, this space is completely lost in the recording. Like hearing
Yeah.
Lubomyr live and hearing the recording are completely different things.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for pointing that out. This is why we need continuous pianists to continue to bring this great phenomenon, this experience, to give the people a chance to experience this music, which requires an intense, you complete, total devotion of the human being. Like the classical pianist is playing the sonata, the concerto, with total devotion to making the notes right and bringing out as much beauty in the whole thing as he or she can. In continuous music, you go beyond that. You're not thinking much about the beauty. Your whole being, your soul, your body, your hands, your arms, your torso, your legs, your feet, your mind, your eyes. Well, your eyes are closed, but they're closed because you are in another dimension and you don't need to see anything. You are your dimension. Your sight is in a kind of gray zone of dimension, like colorless dimensions that are moving. It's indescribable, and and so uh, it's completely abs- absorbs the entire human being to play it. I mean, not smaller pieces or something like for example the meditations. I've started actually to play meditation 1B in concert because it's quite actually people start to understand there where the music began, because meditation 1A and 1B are the very origins of continuous music. So that's but even playing those one. But as you go into the very highest levels of playing, or even getting close as you approach them, uh, well, for like you achieve a physical state that is indescribable. It's it's not. I realize. I think it's a meditation, but a meditation on three levels. There's one level of meditation. There's another one of actually the balancing of the left and the right is another level of meditation, and then there's a third level, which is kind of the whole thing, the whole thing at once. So, in a sense, it's like the Holy Trinity. You have the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ the Son as the two, and then there is the third, God the Father, who is made up of those two. but is a new entity. There is a different entity. So maybe this will help people to understand the Holy Trinity. Is that there's this uh, obvious level of it's you know meditation. It's not meditate. It's it's well okay. Let's put it this way. Okay, now I know maybe better how to describe it. There's that meditation which is passive, and you're just kind of sitting there, feeling. Uh, and then there's another level of meditation, which is extremely active. Like you're generating generally 12 notes a second, nonstop, throughout like an hour and a half. You know, well, you stop for it, but when you're playing, you're just going, and it's so so you're constantly thinking of the future. It's like you're building the road, like in continuous music. You are the train, you are the track, and as your train is rolling, you're laying the track. You're not just laying the track, you're banging in the those things that the steel tracks are nailed to or bolted to, right? The actual, I forget the name, uh, yeah, but anyway, so you're building the track, and yet you vision it. You okay, the train must go here, and this is where, and then there's that third level where you just all of those, everything, and it's uh, quite extraordinary, and that is the level of devotion that the pianist experiences and has to give. Like you can't just okay, I'm going to play this piece by Lubomyr Melnyk, and you just play the notes. But you play it with emotion, of course, and everything. But no, you're going to play. I mean, the things so far, Nathan. Like I think the hardest piece you've done, but done so well, is the Cloud Passat. Okay, and that is not still at that level. Okay, there is not that. You will see there's in other pieces, the bigger pieces later on that come. Uh, Certainly, like I'm speaking of. Uh, well, I guess I didn't really experience it until Windmills, uh, and what do you call it? And then the End of the World, and now the Sacred Cows. And those are the three big ones, and that is where the whole being becomes just goes somewhere spectacular. Um, it's very hard to describe some. I would like to describe. I mean, I could keep speaking for another 6 hours, Nathan, but I really need to stop and we save things for another time. But I will tell you, I would like to tell people about the miraculous things that have happened uh, within the music. Like truly, things have stunned and shocked me to yeah.
And if anyone who's listening has the right contacts, Lubomyr has written a lot about similar things in his book, Open Time, but unfortunately it was only privately published, and you can't get access to it ordinarily.
Although Nathan, it's good you bring it because I do. It has now been put into like the whole book is now in Word and with all the images and everything. So uh, it's simply a matter of finding a publisher who would be willing to publish it because everything is ready now. It's before it was simply photocopy pages. Now it can it's an actual Word form. Like publish it. So hopefully it will be available. Hopefully.
Yeah, and that book really blew my mind. Like immediately, I read it for 3 weeks, not fully in detail, but I read it for 3 weeks, and immediately my playing was better. I can't explain, but it happens.
Nice. Okay, Nathan. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about this music, and we'll see you hopefully soon again.
Yes, lots of very interesting history here, and still many more questions about the beginning. So, for example, you mentioned the analogy of the train, but in my mind, this train did not exist yet. Like, there's still this first step of jumping onto a train, and you didn't know that it existed yet. This is a difficult thing to imagine. Like, I can't just sit down at a keyboard and just play.
Okay, let's talk. Let's start our next talk with that specific
Yeah.
thing, and I'll try to focus only on that one particular aspect in the beginning. So, because I think I can describe it and explain it to you better, a little bit more. Okay.
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 Very good.
All right. Thank you. Bye.